Recidivism.
Recidivism.
So recidivism is basically the rate at which people re-enter from prison successfully or go back into prison. The recidivism is going back into the prison side of it.
So recidivism to me, in my own words, is kind of like a revolving door. So being in and out of the prison system and how much you like how many times a person goes in and out, like literally revisits, just how I think of it. And yeah, recidivism.
Yeah, so I guess recidivism kind of includes the process of leaving incarceration and coming back into the community, and then the likelihood or the percent of people who end up returning after that to incarceration. Kind of has a lot of different definitions and can be hard to pin down specifically, but that's also really an important thing to do because it is often used as a statistic. So knowing what that means and how people operationalize that term is important.
The formal definition, according to the National Institute of Justice, is that it refers to a person's relapse into criminal behavior, often after the person receives sanctions or undergoes intervention for a previous crime. Over 2 million people in the United States are incarcerated, and within that 2 million people, racial disparities still exist. In 2016, Black Americans represent 12% of the adult population, but they also represent 33% of the prison population. White Americans represent 64% of the adult population, but 30% of the prisoner population. And Hispanic Americans represent 16% of the adult population and 23% of the prisoner population. And once a prisoner has finished their sentence, they have a record, and that record stays with them. According to a study done in 2017, about 70 million Americans had an arrest record of some kind. That was about 1 in 3 adults. And with these records showing up during background checks and even after people have already completed their sentences. For example, a record can be seen for a job interview, college applications, and signing up for an apartment, and more. Arrest records contain moments of arrest like felonies and misdemeanors, but it also shows non-convictions like arrests with dismissed charges, warrants, or any other case where the charges were withdrawn or the person was found not guilty. There is a process where you can expunge or seal your record. If you have an arrest record, but it was a non-conviction, you can start the process right away. Otherwise, there's a required wait period that could take 15 years before you could go to the courts and be able to state your case. And the law in some states states that it is only available for non-violent convicted crimes. So there is a process, but it could take years for the process to be completed. According to the Prison Initiative policy, 43.6% of Black women and 32.2% of Black men that were formerly incarcerated couldn't find a job. The Second Chance Act was a grant for rehabilitation programs across all 50 states. President Bush signed the act into law in 2008, and in 2017 alone, it gave over $68 million to help fund different rehabilitation programs. Ban the Box has also been implemented in many states in over 100 cities. Ban the Box essentially takes the box on a job application that asks if a person has committed a crime and moves it to a later point in the application process. This gives formerly incarcerated people a chance to be hired and lets them explain their sentence, whereas before the box served as an automatic disqualifier, leaving many former felons on the street, homeless and jobless. We interviewed Carl at Big C's Waffles, who is the owner of Big C's Waffles, to give his opinion about the Ban the Box initiative.
Oh yeah, I would definitely be for it.
I would definitely be for, because, like you said, as soon as somebody checks that box, felony or misdemeanor, that's the red flag. And 50-50 chance, is less than that. So as soon as you check that, then you really feel like you already didn't get the job. As soon as you check that box, and you may have somebody reach out to you, or they may overlook it, but still, I think that's a good idea. Because, like I said, you want to get to know that person before you just know that, okay, they were a felony or they got misdemeanors. Then they look at your record, and if they look at your record, then you might have, something crazy on your your felony misdemeanors. You might have anything. But like you said, either you get a chance to explain yourself, or and it'll be up to them. For them to take a chance on you.
Numerous studies have found a link between lower rates of recidivism and visitation during incarceration. Specifically, studies have shown inmates that received visits from friends and family recidivated at longer rates and had much longer delays of recidivism when compared to inmates that received no visits. Also, it was found that the more visits an inmate has in the span of time in which an inmate received visits showed even lower rates of recidivism and delays. So, for an example, an inmate that received 3 visits over the course of the 3 months prior to their release were less likely to or delay their recidivism compared to an inmate that received 3 visits in the 1 month prior to their release. While the current design of the system is not working, we can build upon the successes we have consistently seen in visitation. A study published by the Crime and Delinquency Journal found that while there is a positive correlation between visitation and recidivism rates, the average inmate only receives 2 visits over the course of their entire sentence. Currently, there are a number of issues that prevent friends and family members from being able to consistently visit incarcerated loved ones. 3 overarching themes around visitation issues include: prison locations are typically far away from the communities of inmates, making it difficult for civilians to make the travel. Administrative prison policies, such as barring former offenders from visitation and charging civilians to perform their background checks. And finally, visitation environments are often unwelcoming to civilians. After traveling long distances, visitors are typically faced with long waiting lines with little access to bathrooms or water fountains, or even no access at all, which is not nearly an ideal situation for children visiting loved ones.
Another policy option works both in and out of prison. It's work release. Work release programs provide inmates the opportunity to work jobs during the day, but remain in prison during the night. It teaches these inmates job skills, social skills, and helps them to begin to integrate into society, thereby easing the transition when it happens for real. Release depends on good behavior, and usually happens in the last 6 months of a sentence. One of its main flaws, however, is that it exists on the county and local levels, so around the country, certain programs are more helpful and effective than others. Our proposal is to create federal guidelines that each local branch comply to. Based on past state analyses, these federal guidelines help each local program to be more cost-effective, saving states millions of dollars. It also helps the inmates to reintegrate and focus on moving forward, as many jobs will continue when an inmate gets out of prison. Finally, it serves to ease the transition process everywhere, not just in certain counties, and reduce recidivism all around the country.
A solution to the high rates of recidivism includes changing the regulation laws for obtaining an occupational license. An occupational license is a credential that state governments require in order for a person to hold a certain occupation. Licenses are required for jobs in all industries, and about 25% of labor workers in America, about 3.7 million people, work jobs that required them. However, those with records are unable to apply for them because the occupational licensing boards have blanket bans blocking them from applying, or they have a good moral character clause in the application process that they can use to call someone unqualified for the license, even if the crime had nothing to do with the job duties. And this cuts off a large percentage of avenues to obtain work. Reform for occupational licensing laws should focus on getting rid of blanket bans that exclude people with records from applying,
Instead, the board should be more explicit in their policies, where if someone is banned, it is because their past crime has a direct or rational relationship to the duties of the occupation. This would increase their ability to enter the job market, rather than being banned from about 1/4 of the job market automatically.